All right, everybody, it's time to roll the wind. Practice like you play like you practice. Let's go roll. Well, hello there, DarthNater.
Hey Ed, how's it going?
I'm
Happy
all right,
Thursday.
Nate. I appreciate you coming in and talking with me tonight and getting all of this great information into some type of format which we can kind of preserve for the craps community, because we're going to talk about people that most of us have never met, and a lot of them may have already passed away, but that's kind of the idea, is we want to get this done while we've got people to talk about them. So I appreciate you showing up.
For sure. Glad to do it. I guess it all started when I was at the boardwalk playing in Vegas one weekend. I had a running schedule where every Super Bowl I would go to Vegas. And so this year is the first year I missed being in Vegas for the Super Bowl, because this is a year I'm now back in Virginia working with the Navy. So I finally broke that streak that started in 1999 of every Super Bowl in Vegas. So I'm in Vegas one year for the Super Bowl. I think it was like 2003, and we're playing at the boardwalk, playing craps at the boardwalk. And craps, that was kind of new to me. I had read a couple of basic books. I had read the Green, Silverstein book, the typical stuff. Oh, three come bets with maximum odds, and that kind of stuff. Stay off the place bets. That was the book that actually he wrote when he wrote it for Playboy magazine, and it's a pretty good book in terms of telling you how to do certain things. And I'm playing at the boardwalk, which is gone now. I think that's where the Aria is. So you're talking about things that are dead. Talk about the boardwalk first, because it's gone. And I've got some trophies from the boardwalk, because when they closed it, I went down and snaked as much as I could, because I had a host there and all that other stuff. But they're in a box somewhere between Virginia and Vegas. So, we'll save those for another program. So I'm playing at the boardwalk, and it was a small table. It was like a 10-foot table, and I was like next to the stick. And I had no clue. I was just kind of tossing the dice, but I'd seen a guy kind of tossing them soft and hitting the same spot. So, I was doing that, and I was probably having, fives up, because I always liked the fives on top, because, I had no clue. And I must have tossed the dice for like an hour, hour and a half. The dealers knew I was clueless, because they were actually increasing my bets for me, and you know, and then someone told me next to me, well, when the dealers bet for you, you need to bet for them. So I was tossing chips in for them, and it was, a complete chaos, because it was a Saturday night before the football game. There's 10,000 people at this 10-foot table, and it's just the fur is flying. But I held the dice for like an hour, just doing that little floppy thing. And since I had the big long wingspan here, I was just throwing them out, letting them go. I had no clue what I was doing. But when I was done, I'd won like $300 or $400. And one of the other guys said, "Oh, that was a great hand. I won like $9,000." And this is like in 2003. So
Wow.
he threw me a black chip and thanked me for the effort. And I said, "Hey, anytime." But it became apparent to me that, well, if he can win 6,000, he's here when I'm here, and he started with about what I started with. It's like, I must be doing something wrong. So I went on Google, because everything in the internet's on Google, and of course it's all true.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. And so I'm looking for craps betting. That's what I typed in, craps betting, and I get the usual, I get some funny kind of ad. And then the next thing, line number 2, is the dice coach, who has a class on betting. It's like, oh, okay. What's a dice coach? It's like, it had kind of a good ring to it. So I clicked on it. I saw, oh, that's Bo Parker. I looked at his website, and it's like, Okay, this is kind of interesting. So, this was like a month after the football game, and I knew I was going back to Vegas because we had a conference out there. We're doing a software install, and so we had there was a software conference in Vegas. So I was basically was able to get a trip to Vegas paid for by the company, not the company, but the group I worked for then. So I call him up and I say, I want to learn how to bet better in craps because I don't think I'm very good. He goes, well, why don't you think you're very good? I said, well, because I was at a table a couple months ago and made, $300-400, and the guy next to me made, 7 or 8 thousand. He says, oh yeah, we can probably help you with that. It's like, you think? And so I make meet appointment. He's going to come pick me up early evening after the not the seminar, the conference for the day, the convention. Right, it was actually a convention then, and he came to pick me up, and we were driving up to his house in North Las Vegas from the Strip. I was staying at the Mirage then, and so there's a huge traffic jam, and getting out of Vegas at rush hour can always be tough. So on the way up, he's taking all these back roads. We're like zigzagging past the Wynn. I think we went through downtown, past Fremont Street. So it was like a tour as well. He's talking to me. He says, "Well, I figured you want to know about dice setting." He says most of my calls from new guys are about dice setting. They've seen someone toss the dice and all that. I said, I read about that on your site, but I just don't believe it. It just, I'm a graduate civil engineer, and once the dice hit the diamonds, it's going to be random. So I just don't believe that you can overcome that kind of physical situation, that limitation. He says, yeah, that's about right, about 15% of the time. Rest of the time, it just doesn't matter. And I'm like, and I said, well, I just, I just don't know about how to bet. He said, well, when we get to the house, let me throw a few and you can see for yourself if that's something that might interest you. I think most people, once they realize that the diamonds don't have the big impact that people presume they do, that you can, you're going to see that there's something there. So he takes me to his house. It's really nice, a really nice table, really great setups, and he puts my head right down on the left hook because he's shooting from stick right, and so I'm down here like this, and I'm watching come in, and they're like barely touching the wall and dropping, and they're just kind of rolling together like dice. I didn't bring my dice to do any dice kind of things.
Yeah.
But, you know the idea.
Oh yeah.
And so it's like, well, this is kind of cool. I said, so you just put them in your hand and fling them, That's the word I'm using now. I probably said something else then. He said,
Yeah.
oh no, that's by the wayside. Nobody does that anymore. I go, oh, okay. I just saw 100 guys at lunchtime doing that at the Mirage. So there's still a few guys that are doing that. So
Right.
and he says, well, what do you think? And I say, well, okay, you've convinced me that there's something there. So let's go. So I got upsold the dice setting from betting, and he gave me some good betting tips, but I think I've probably become a better dice setter than I have a better for the year. So.
All right. I didn't mean to interrupt the story because you're there. You got your face down on the.
Yeah, so I'm looking at it. Yeah, let's get back. You can edit out that other part, save it for
Yeah. I'll move
Act 3 or something. So I'm looking at it, and it's like, wow, this is really good stuff. And then he says, yeah, and he throws a lot. I can range the dice this way, and I get sixes and eights, and so yeah, I signed up for the setting class, and the very first thing he did was he wanted to start me at stick left. I said, oh no, wait a second, right away I pushed back. It's like, oh now now all of a sudden, I don't like that idea. I said, I don't like that idea because I'm left-handed, and so when you're a lefty, you've got a natural kind of backhand because everything you do is backward in a right-handed world.
Yeah.
So I said, I golf right-handed. I play baseball right-handed because the curse of Little League, they teach all the kids how to bat right-handed, whether you're a lefty or not. So I've got this kind of predisposition. So he says, okay. So he puts me on stick right, and I start tossing, and it's pretty thin. So we got to hold the dice a little bit different. So he shows me the 3-finger grip, and my fingers aren't the same size, so that was really hard for me. So I wound up with the 2-finger grip, and that worked pretty good. And after about 2 hours, I actually looked like I kind of had something figured out. So it's like 6 months later, I came out for another class with him, and then the following year, I found out about him, and him and Heavy did a class together. So I went to that. So I met Heavy, and I'm meeting all these other folks that are around. I'm meeting this guy Irish. I'm meeting this guy Mad Dog. Everybody's got nicknames. Everybody's kind of like, trying to be low profile. They don't want to get in the way of the man. And, guys like South Street Swami, Howard Rock and Roller, Roadrunner. So a lot of the classic guys, early 2000s. I got a little tidbit here. One of the things we had, this was the first Craps Fest, the roster of people that were there. I went to the archives, and it's got people on there. Like I met Steve Trey there, who was at the time from Texas also, and he was a mechanical engineer, and he kind of had my same view on this, but we became like best buddies after that one class. In fact, he was best man at the wedding 5 years ago, and so he was at the class this weekend, and so we're still in touch. Other people like Charlie 009, he's gone now, and of course we had 6 or 7 other guys. Stanford Wong was there. It was basically we went to a live session at New York, and it was a who's who of the community. Then was at this craps table, and in the middle of it all was this kind of newbie Nate guy, and I was even DarthNater then. So it's like this Nate guy. Who is he? Well, I had been reading the DiceSetter.com stuff. I had been reading everything, because the internet then, that's back when internet was nothing but facts. So and no fake content, no fake news, and so there's a lot of good content there. I mean, I think most people back in the early 2000s, DiceSetter.com was the place to be. And about this time, Heavy was ramping up the Axis Power Craps and the forum. Bo had a real active website. There was a couple other people. There was a couple of real prolific posters like the Mad Professor, a couple other folks that would post a lot. So there was a lot of content out there. And when you didn't know anything, it's like you're just hanging on to the fire hose, trying to pull in as much as you can. And some of it you think through and say, well, I'm not sure that's as strong a tidbit as I think it should be. So you kind of process it that way. I think one of the people that really had a big influence on me was Mad Dog. He had a really good disposition. His first name was Sean. I won't mention his last name because I don't think he's really participating in the community anymore. But he had done the bonetracker, the original bonetracker stuff, and it was back when I was just learning Excel about the same time. So Excel was new to me. It was new to me, but the whole analytics side of it. This was back before they even had the word analytics. It was just all data processing back then. And so he and I were talking. I was learning Excel, and I asked him one day. I said, "Well, what if you did this, this, and that to it?" He says, "Oh, I thought about doing that. Maybe the next release." And it's like, "Oh yeah, you are an IT guy." So we started talking about stuff like that, and I mean, when the Mad Professor came with his dice tool thing, he and I figured out how to integrate that in with bonetracker, and that's probably one of the big stories I have for you. Is after this class, like a month later, I'm at, I think, one of Heavy's classes out in Vegas, and most of the same folks were there. I stayed over on a Monday, and I went to Hooters with a fellow named Leo, and I forget what his nickname was. Let's see if it was up here. Oh, Leo the Lion. I should have known that. The Lion. And he had the same toss I had, but because he was right-handed, he was on stick left. He says, "Oh, I figured out where the dead spot is on this table. I got to bring you because your toss and my toss were the same." And so, sure enough, second time around, I just go crazy and was just betting, just hitting the nine after nine after nine after nine after nine after nine. And it's to the point where we're just saying, just another nine. And it got to the point where the guys were stacking big chunks of chips in the field, and so I started throwing in the chips even, and the chips fell down on the thing. The guy picks the chips up and up nine. You don't call no roll because I was tipping them, so they just pick the chips off one chip by one. We're all just waiting to see what it is, and it's a nine. And there was a guy that kept throwing nickels in, for the hard eight, hop the hard eight, hop the hard eight. And I just kept throwing nines. So he got really mad and he yelled a big expletive at me, throw a frickin' eight or throw a frickin' hard eight.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, "Oh, he yelled at the shooter. What's going to happen now?" And I put the dice down and looked at him. This was back when they had the riser around the craps table, so it was almost like a stadium effect. I said, "Bet the frickin' nine," and then threw one, and everybody was like, so. Needless to say, mayhem assumed, and then about that time, the suits all showed up, and there was, the fun was over. So I colored up, and on the same day, drove to Mesquite in Nevada, and met Mad Dog, who had driven down from Salt Lake. So we spent like 5 hours in a Starbucks at the Casablanca Casino. They have a big Starbucks there with both our laptops, fiddling away, and
Two engineers. Yeah, I got you.
well, I'm not sure. I think he was an IT guy, not an engineer.
Two techies.
Yeah.
Two
We were totally geeked out, and so we did that for like 5 hours, doing the whole dice tool into bonetracker thing, and I had 2 or 3 other experimental things I was screwing around with, and then after that we went down and played, and he was stick right 2, and I was stick right 3. I was right in the right hook, but I was left-handed, so I was able to wind up being stick right 1. And we just demolished that place after basically 5 hours in a Starbucks. And it's like, this is pretty good. This stuff travels. this stuff travels. And so then after that, I had to travel back to Vegas, which was like a 90-minute drive. And then I wound up, that was back when you could do 4 or 5 sessions a day. And then 2 days later, it flew out. So that was another really good event. But he and I stayed friends. I found one of my files on the computer. I was looking for pictures for you, but I haven't found all my pictures yet. So we'll have to save those for another program. But I did find an email I sent him, And it wasn't the email, because back in those days, email was so sketchy that you would write it on Word and then paste it into the email. And
Right.
it's all about, oh, this is a long list of things I'd like to do with bonetracker. And oh, we need to go more than 6 transpositions on the transpose tab, because 6 isn't enough. I told him how I had cloned that tab, and I'd made one that did like 40 transposes for heavy, and 40 wasn't enough for heavy. He wanted more. And we kept seeing all this stuff where like you'd have like 30, 40 sets, and a couple would have the same SRR. We can never figure that out. It was like, well, that's kind of a coincidence. I mean, it's fractions, the 4 decimal places, and it's the same, but there's like no correlation. It was just
Right.
a mathematical anomaly. Was kind of how we wrote it off. And I even talk about it in the file I sent you. Of course, here we are, 15 years later. We figured out it was the coaster stuff.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I know you're going to talk with Doug for one of your programs, and
I hope to. I hope to.
tip of the hat to Doug, because he figured all that stuff out. And it's funny. I met Doug. Doug called me up or emailed me like a month before the Super Bowl in 2020, and said, "There's something I want to show you." I go, "Oh yeah." I'd played with Doug at Christmas and a couple other times when he's in Vegas. Our paths crossed. He was a pretty good guy. He's always an end shooter, and he always shot with his right hand. But he had a little thing a little cheat sheet in his left hand that he kept looking at,
Yeah.
And it's like, so I remember afterwards, I said, "What's that in your hand?" And he says, "Oh, those are my sets." I go, "Oh yeah," because we
Yeah.
all have a couple of favorite sets that we
Sure.
have.
Yeah.
But I looked at these, and it was just like, oh, okay, well, I recognize this one and this one, because those are both V3s. And oh, here's a V2. And there was a couple, and it was just, it was like, oh, okay, these are non-traditional is how I looked at it. Because it was just, and he didn't list them as left and right. He listed top, front. So,
Okay.
which is the convention that we're using in bonetracker on the transpose tabs. So we talked for a while. It was pretty nice, and so he was a good guy. He calls me up later and says, not later, like maybe 2 months later, says, "There's some. I'm coming out to Vegas. Let's meet for coffee. I want to show you some stuff that I've been working on." It's like, oh, okay. I figured he had some bonetracker stuff to show me, because a lot of guys call me with, "Oh, I did this to bonetracker, and it's pretty awesome, and I want to show it to you." So
Yeah.
it's like, okay, I figured that's what it was going to be. He says, "Bring your computer." So then I was convinced that that was what it was going to be, and so I show up, and we go to it's the coffee shop at the Mandalay Bay. I very seldom go into
No
Mandalay.
idea.
It's like, okay,
Nobody goes there.
yeah. It's like, okay, well, at least no one knows me there. I'm walking in with a laptop, and no one
Right.
knows me there. But it is an MGM property, so at least I had status there. And so this was 3 weeks after the Super Bowl in 2020, right before COVID hit. And so he just shows me like these 3 or 4 Word files. And he's actually got like another 10 or 12 of them. And they're organized with, each file is like one column of 24 sets. And I had some dice. And so he says, these sets make sevens the same way. He says, I figured out that this set, he points at the first one, makes sevens the same way as this one, and this one. So I went through and found all the possible combinations that you could have, where like this space and this space would make a 7. So these sets make all the sevens the same way. And he says, so I put all these sets in bone tracker, and sure enough, they all have the same SRR. I said, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. And so he shows me this, and we talk about it. And he says, and the reason this is important is because when I put this one in bone tracker, and it was obviously a V3, it makes a lot of 6s and 8s. I put this one in bone tracker, which is across 6s, makes a lot of 5s and 9s. And it has the same SRR. So I can switch from this one to this one and not be worried that I'm going from a high SR set to a low SR set, because now I have a reason for why I'm moving around. And so, I mean, I know you know where this is going because you were the first guy to take the advanced bone tracker course when we started doing it. So you understand this as well as the next guy, and I know how into it you are because I've seen your videos, which, by the way, are still freaking awesome, you know. And so I said to him, I said, you know, you could put all this stuff in a spreadsheet. You know, you put this in Excel. And he says, you know, it took me like 3 months to learn Word so I could make these. So he says, one of you Excel guys can go the next mile with that. Oh, okay. So I kind of took that as hey, see what you can do with this. So I started putting them together, and then I said, well, I got to organize these somehow. And I know it's a long story, but you know, I'm sure you can chop it up if you have to. But I started organizing it, and I said, well, we got to reference, we got to organize this in a certain way. And so I just started putting them all in Excel. I took, you know, he had 19 Word files, and some of the Word files only had 22 sets on them, didn't have 24. And I said, well, how come they don't all have 24? And he says, well, you know, I just I don't worry too much about that particular group because I never used that, so I never bothered to get the other couple. And I said, well, maybe we're gonna have to get those now, because I mean, you know, we can't have any gaps here. We gotta have the whole program figured out. He's like, I showed him what I was doing with putting it in Excel. He's like, oh, that's kind of cool. He says that, and then we got them all in. And I said, there's 19. He says, well, there's 4 or 5 more, but I never did them because those are all, you know, hardware sets and, you know, parallel 6s. And it's like, no one uses those. I said, well, let's get those in anyway. So we got them all together. And when you just look at them in black and white, it's confusing as hell. If you look at the coaster chart now in all the colors, there's a reason the colors are there, because without the colors, you think it's confusing with the colors. Without the colors, it's just a bunch of numbers. So I started color coding the thing cell by cell by cell by cell, figuring out each one was a V3 or a V2 or a cross 6. So I did all the color coding, and you see the pattern develops. And so I was screwing around with that the end of February, early March. And then, you know, my wife comes back from Europe. She'd been in Europe for 2 weeks, so I had some spare time. So that's why I was just screwing around with it. She comes back from Europe. She says, you know, there's some thing going on in Europe, and everybody's getting sick, and it's coming this way. And I said, we got to hunker down. I go, oh, really? Yeah. So that turned out to be the whole COVID thing. So, you know, a week after she says that, they shut down all the casinos. So I had a lot of spare time. So I basically made the bone tracker beta from a expanded bone tracker that Mark Evangelisto had sent me, where he had basically had a giant transpose tab, and he could transpose any set of transposes. So I just took that and, you know, put another tab in and put the coaster chart in and said, I can figure this out. So I spent about a month, you know, screwed around with a couple of macros, and before we knew that, we had the bone tracker beta. And it was interesting to tie this all together from the original story. This was always the missing link because, you know, we always knew that there was something going on with the different sets. And some gave multiple SRRs, but no one could figure it out why, other than just it was a mathematical thing. A lot of people thought it was symmetry because, you know, you only have so many combinations and all that stuff. But being able to, you know, Doug had the eye, you know, and he, you know, he wasn't scared of math because he, you know, was a math professor, and I think he actually has a degree in mathematics. You'll have to get the details from him on that. And so we figured all that out, and it's always been fascinating because I mean, you look at my old posts, I was never willing to change sets and go sniping, and now, you know, now I can't wait. Now I can't wait to like spread the word. So I managed to work it into a 10-minute story for you. So, well, I mean, Roadrunner was a good shooter, and we used to have classes at his house in Vegas, and then Heavy had a class one weekend at Albuquerque, and he had a house in Albuquerque, and he had a table in Albuquerque and a table in Las Vegas, and he was very accomplished. There's a casino in Albuquerque where you can buy the 10 and 4 with no vig. You know, the one, yeah, and it's a no vig bet. So, you know, obviously, you know, you practice your 4s and 10s before you go to Albuquerque, and he was always a good shooter. Uh, he had a buddy that was with him that was a good shooter. I don't remember that fellow's name. It might have been Swami, but I don't think Swami ever went to Albuquerque. But I've met Swami a couple of times at Bo's house. That's what South Shore Swami, and he's a good fellow too. And you look in the caricature picture that Bo has on his wall. He's got Bo and and Heavy, and one of the guy with the long hair is Swami, and yeah, that's Swami. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, I'm sure Heavy has a nice picture he'll let you have. One of the other guys who was sneaky good, but probably no one remembers, was Charlie 009. Uh, Charlie had a very soft toss. He was always doing game within a game. Then he had this, like, we were just talking about him. I was talking about him with Banker Dude this weekend, who's another guy that's got a good toss. But Charlie was never an end shooter. But Charlie and Kevin both have the same kind of a bet where when they're betting Randy's, they'll place the 6 or the 8. But what Charlie would do is he would place the 6 and 8 for 18 each. And then whichever one hit first, he would take the full hit plus the 18 that was on the other number and stack them all up on the one that hit. Because his theory was, you know, it's more likely you're going to see 2 of the same number than 1 of each. But you don't know which one's coming, so you bet them both. When one hits, you just grab it and you put it all on that. And you go for that second hit, and then you go down to $12 each, and everything's paid for, and you're off to the races. And Charlie wrote like 3 or 4 books, and I was in Vegas last week, and I found them from my archives and brought them. Figured I'd hold up. This is his first one. Charles Westcott was his name. You know, he's not around anymore. They're not very thick, but it's, you know, this is a picture of Charlie on the back. Let me see if I can. So Charlie was a good guy. He and Felipe, aka Dead Cat, started the Dice Institute with the Mad Professor. And this is Charlie's other book, his second book. And Craps and Smelling the Roses. I think they're out of print. So here's another picture of Charlie. And I mean, he would bring his books to all the conferences, and it was just about spreading the knowledge of Charlie. Charlie wasn't trying to make any money on him, but he and Felipe, which is Dead Cat, who was also passed away, he was a pretty good shooter, but he was like a heat magnet everywhere he went. It was like, there's just something about his attitude. It was probably his long hair, and he was kind of, like, screw you, you're the man. And so even though he's like giving you all these speeches about trying to be under the radar, he was like a heat magnet. But he
Right.
started the Dice Institute with Charlie, and they had some kind of deal with the Mad Professor. Because Felipe knew how to do blogging and all the blogging software. He knew that really, really well. So he was letting the Mad Professor become like a blogger. So there was a lot of Mad Professor content on the old Dice Institute site that went away. And
so the Dice Institute wasn't a class or anything. It was just a website of information.
Yeah, and it was for the hardcore DI guy. I mean, they had the Mad Professor. Charlie would write a lot of articles, especially for the new player, trying to help him make the transition from flinger to tosser. They started to have I think we had two like conventions, and here's one of my name badges from the convention. And so Felipe maybe just get the little Darth Vader picture on there. So that was kind of cool. And I guess the hat here meant that I had some level of skill. And so and they had a good thing. They had a good thing going. Bo worked a lot with them in terms of helping them with logistics and some stuff when they came to Vegas. And kudos to Bo. He's always willing to help out. And so I think it just got to the point where it was just, running a website's a lot of work. And I think this before there was YouTube, and the software wasn't nearly as good as it is now. You don't have all this stuff that'll make your website for you. Like you had to all figure that out. And I know I suspect the same similarities with being a YouTube guru. There's, each technology's got its own list of challenges. So, and but they had some pretty good content, but it all got kind of chewed up. I mean, the real problem, he'll tell you when he's on there, he's on his third bulletin board now. Because the first one was just the software just couldn't transition to the next generation. The second generation just fell apart, and now he's on third generation software. That's a lot of, you spend all your time moving your content, and that was always one of the big attractions with working with Steve, is because he had such good content. He really understood betting, and I have to say that if I ever have a betting question between Bo and Heavy, that's the end all be all for betting advice. So, but I think from a content point of view, Heavy's content was much better than Dice Institute's, because they had the Mad Professor anecdotal wise, but you got the hardcore theory about DI from Heavy. And I took like 2 or 3 because I guess I was a slow learner or something. But every time you learn something more, because there's so much content, you gotta let it sink in. Well, the great thing about playing with Heavy is you never have to worry about getting any heat, because Heavy will take all the heat for you. And he will throw himself in front of the train to protect his crew. And he's got 100 stories he can tell him to distract him. If that doesn't work, he'll light a cigar. Uh, I mean, I won't tell you any too many Heavy stories. Heavy's got 100 stories I'm sure he wants to tell you in one of your programs. But playing with Heavy was always good. You when you play with the same folks, you learn what they can do, and you can tell when they're off and on. You can tell when there's been a disturbance in the force. You can tell when something's bothering them. Heavy was always a 6 and 8 machine. I would have different strategy. I would be always very aggressive on the 6 and 8. Same with Aloha Johnny. Aloha Johnny is a 6 and 8 machine. They use completely different sets, different kind of tosses, different kind of styles, but same results. Although Aloha Johnny is also a hardway machine, although Heavy's become a kind of a hardway guy too. But yeah, Heavy, very solid toss, and it's different kind of toss too. Uh, is he has 2 or 3 different tosses that are all, axial tosses. Uh, he also, the last couple 3 years, I have to give him credit. He started shooting from the end of the table, and he's become very deadly from the end of the table. He's had some really long hands on some really tough tables. Like I think 3 years ago we were at the Strat, and he had 53 rolls from the end of the Strat. Yeah, I know. I was there for the last 30. So I think I bought $100 in chips from you and started. Yeah, exactly. And he's uh, I've kind of encouraged him. He should play more from straight out, and he's kind of admitted in the seminars a few times that, when he sits next or stands next to the stick man, he starts chatting everybody up, and he kind of gets out of a groove. And we kind of always knew that. You put him out there on the end, he talks to whoever's standing next to him, but then he gets the dice and he eats all business. And so uh, Heavy's Heavy's got a good game, and see a horn, bet a horn. He's got a good eye. I'm sure he'll tell you the story about when we were all at the Imperial Palace 3 years ago, and we were all kind of just grinding our way. We were going to go one more loop around the table, and I was shooting the dice, and I was having a hard time hitting my landing spot, and I managed to make a 6 and an 8 and a 5, and I made my point, which I think was an 8. And I'm looking at the ATS, and it's like, well, I'm going to change sets and try to go outside. So I went to my V2 set and threw a hard 4 on the come out. And I was like, "Oh, this is awesome." And Heavy sees that, and I mean, you've played a lot with me. I never bet the hard ways. I, I I watch all you guys that do, but I don't bet them because I've got 20, 30,000 tosses in the books that say I have no advantage on the hard ways. And you know, it's ironic because my all my sets in my coaster group, if the threes are up here, it's actually you cant them one like this. So one's always trying to catch up to the other. So the threes are this way, the twos are this way. So the two caught up, and it was a hard 4. And Heavy, who knows I never throw hard ways, said, "Oh, that's different for Nate." So Heavy goes and puts 5, 5, 5, 5 on all the hard ways. So I figure, the hard 4, the 4 is the point. So I'm just going to stick with that set, and I'm going to try and get the 10, and because I'm going for the ATS, and I'm more than willing to change sets. And that's one of the great things about the coaster thing. It's like, why spend 30 tosses to get the ATS when you can get it in 15? And it's like you got a better chance of having a 15 roll hand than a 30 roll hand. So let's just get that. Let's get that thing when there's no money on the table. That you're not really risking a whole lot. So I was going ATS all the way, and I figured, well, why not? I'm not really hitting my spot. So at the very next roll I throw, and I'm trying to hit the spot, but I overthrow, and one actually hits the wall and wedges into the crease on the fly, and it's a hard 6. I didn't think anything of it. I just, I got paid for my 6, and I'm going on. If I throw back-to-back hard 6s, I hear this little kind of murmur at the other end of the table. No idea. And then I throw 2 or 3 more numbers. I get my 10, so I'm all happy now. I stick with the same set because that set also makes a lot of 3s and 12s, and I still needed a 3 and a 12, so I'll just stick with that same set. And a couple throws later, I have another hard 6, and just total mayhem at the other end of the table. So it turned out what Heavy had done. I always, there's always, Heavy's always up to something. There's always something going on. And so first thing I do is I look at his 6, because the last time there was mayhem like that, Heavy had an $1,800 8 when I was shooting. You've heard that story. He'll tell you that story maybe. Maybe I'll tell you at the end here. But so I'm looking down there, and I don't see the giant stack of black chips like I did that other day. So it's like, oh, he just got paid, 50 for one. What's the big deal? Why is everybody nutso down there? Well, I find out later that he had power pressed that nickel to a quarter on the first hard 6. And then he got paid like 200 and something for the second hard 6. So he pressed it up to 100. And then the third hard 6 paid $900. And so that's what it was. There was like no bets on the table. Heavy just collected $900. And he pressed it to 150. And 2 rolls later, I threw a hard 8 with the same set, just flopped them over, right? So that's a classic Heavy story, because Heavy was looking at, he said, well, Nate doesn't throw hard ways, so maybe he's off and I'm going to get a lot of hard ways. And so that level of observational skill, he made the bet and he was right. And the irony was, the only reason I got that hard way to begin with was because I had changed sets trying to get,
trying to hit the
outside
ATS
number. And there's only the third hard way was a good toss. The other 2 were just fluky wedges in the table. The dice got trapped in the crease, but bad throw, good result.
Right.
Better than a good throw, bad result.
Yeah.
And and then the next shooter was Mark. And so because Heavy had made so much money on the hard ways, he went like 10, 10, 10 on the ATS. And, Mark hit the all when he finally changed to a cross 6 set. I'm sure you're going to have Mark on. So I asked him about
I've got him scheduled. Yeah.
Yeah. So he threw a cross 6. And so Heavy wound up hitting the all for double his usual bet, just because he had a little extra on it. So that's
I think I've got the chip porn where we laid it out by my hat there from that.
Yeah, I think you do. I think we made about, I think between you and me, we had Sean the curler was there.
Yeah.
I think we had I'm not sure who
I'll
else
have to pull that out of my hard drive and slide it in here.
Yeah, I think I'm sure we can find it somewhere.
I've got it.
We got all this chip porn on our cameras and our phones, but that was a I think we had about 40 grand in chip porn.
I don't know if it was that much on that one, but it was a lot. I mean, we had a good night. I remember the dice came to me after that, and I just looked at the dealers and I said, color coming in.
Yeah, we were all waiting for you to shoot. That's the only reason we hung around, was because we figured you were going to shoot again. And I think after Mark, it was kind of, Sean was, I think, in front of you, and
Sean had to catch the flight, and he was with me. Yeah. So I was like, it was like 1 o'clock in the morning or something, or maybe I was late.
I think because he had a 5 o'clock flight with the cleaner.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that was what. So I think I don't know where the cleaner was, but
He was probably sleeping.
yeah,
He was smart.
he
But
lost 10 grand though.
yeah. I remember that. That was a great hand. That was a great Monday night closing out hand right there.
Well, and it's funny too because I think most of the last couple of classes, the big scores have been on Sundays and Mondays, and I think by that, and I think for me and heavy, uh, there's a lot going on when you're trying to run one of these classes. I think heavy makes it look so natural, like, oh, I just showed up and did a dice class. Well, there's a lot of work behind the scenes that heavy does, and it's I mean, I didn't realize how much work heavy puts into organizing it and all the collecting and reservations with the school down there in Biloxi and just getting everybody in the same place at the same time. And you know I mean, he has to file paperwork with like the gaming commission in Mississippi just to be able to hold a class. Oh yeah. And uh, it was just yeah, he does. There's a lot of stuff that goes into what he has to do. And so I mean, classic example, this Monday, I mean, class is over and he's Monday at Paris, and he just tore into a hand. He had a great hand this last Monday. And it was like, I am proud to say I followed the classic heavy press strategy.
Yay for you.
$15 went to 25, went to 50, went to 100, got the hit at 200, got the hit on that. So I didn't go to 250 because
Come on, you got to go to 250. You got to go to 250.
yeah, I know. I should have done the banker dude press and done
Yeah, he's got a strong press.
Right to 75 and then 150, 300.
Yeah.
I should, but I told myself, I said, if I get a hit at 200, I'm going to be up for the year. And I keep track of that kind of stuff. I keep track of my annual performance. I still do the envelope thing. And so since 2005, I've been up every year that I've played since I discovered dice setting and dice influencing and all this stuff. So I was in the red after the trip to Biloxi, deservedly so, because I was stupid like an idiot. I was at my loss limit and didn't put any money on the ATS the night I tossed it. So stupid.
Yeah, you always got to bet on yourself, man.
Well, I know, but I was following protocol on I'm at my loss limit.
Yep.
And it's like, okay, well, screw that. All you guys listening at home, you didn't hear me say that. But yeah, so I was kind of, leaving Biloxi, I was a little torqued off about that. So I knew where I stood, and so I knew if I pressed up and got and Heavy's a 4 machine. I mean, he's using that 6 and 8 set, and it's strong on the 6 and 8. I mean, he made 2 6 points, he made 2 8 points, and we're still resetting the place bets, come bets on the 6 and 8. And meanwhile, he just keeps pounding. I saw him as soon as I got the second hit on the 6, I spread to the 4 and the 10. So they were just waiting for him to show up, and he started pounding 4s, and it's like, and they were all hard 4s too.
Oh boy!
One of the guys at the other end of the table had at least a $700 hard 4.
Wow!
That Heavy hit for him, because I was looking at because these guys were all turning off on the come out, and I'm looking at all this stuff, and I could see there was like a purple chip, maybe 1 or 2 black chips, and some green chips. So that was like a strange press progression that the guy had kept feeding. And And he got that hit on that hard 4, and I think Heavy made the point of 9, and everybody pressed the 4. I had just taken the hit at the $200 4, and then he's coming out, and you'll appreciate this. I haven't mentioned this to him yet, but this was really a strange evolution. Is he threw a hard 4 on the come out, and everybody was off.
Y'all didn't hop it?
I think he hopped it for a nickel.
Okay.
But you could tell he's looking at, I mean, he must have had at least $100 hard 4, maybe more. And everybody else, and you could just feel the energy go out of the room when they saw that hard 4. Because Heavy, I think, was the only one that hopped it.
Right.
You know, that's what he does. He turns off his hard waves, and then he hops them. But he either hopped it for a nickel or a dime. I forget which. But I saw all this energy just leave the room. And it was like, and he was muttering because 2 guys had just bought in on the hand before, and he had just a minefield of stuff. So he was pissed off about missing the hard 4. He was I think he was a little annoyed. So I whispered to the dealer lady, I said, turn me off. And sure enough, he caught one of those chips and 7'd out. It was only 70 through the whole day. He only needed the 3 and the 11 for the all. He had 4 fire bets, so you can tell he was killing it. And the guys at the other end had all bet the fire bet.
Yeah.
And he was just, I mean, there's no way he was in the minefield for at least 20 rolls. And that was the only time he hit one of the chips. And you could just tell it was like a disturbance in the force. It's like he says in the class, when you see something happens with the energy. And so, you know, I mean, you listen to him, you learn this stuff. And so I guess I learned a lesson, and I hope it wasn't at his expense, because I was the only one that turned off.
Yeah.
And you know, I left my pass line bet on, and I was hoping when I turned off, he'd throw a 3 or an 11, and we'd get a small or a tall.
Right.
That's usually what happens, you know.
Right.
And but yeah, he's got the eye for seeing stuff before other people do.
He really does. He really does. I admire. I mean, he's a hell of a gambler. That's all I can say. I mean,
and I don't think he sees it as gambling. I think
no. I mean, but just using that term, I'm not saying it's gambling, but he recognizes what's going on,
and he puts money behind it,
and he puts his money on it. So yeah. Tell me about your chip collection.
Okay, let me show you one more book first. I dug this one out too. This is
all right. Hang on. Let me move me out of the way real quick.
Yeah. This is the Yuri book. And yeah, that's Yuri there. And it's another really thin book. So I brought this on. You see, it's got a few notes in it, a little bookmark. But I mean, the pictures are super poor quality. I mean, I've got one of Heavy's slide decks in one of the folders here. I'll save for another show. But I mean, content-wise, you know, this is the book that started it all. But Heavy's content is, you know, this guy didn't understand the dice setting. He understood that you could control a toss, but his dice setting stuff, it's really hard to figure out what he's talking about. But I found this book. You know, not too many people see that. It's in pretty good shape. You know, it's not on eBay though, so good luck. He uses x-x, and he uses like an exit velocity equation with the square root. Yeah. I don't know if he's an engineer. Maybe someone just wrote it down for him. You know, he's got sigmas inside his square roots. I mean, I'm trying to find you the art of controlled throwing. That's a chapter. Well, if you get Steve-O does the Yuri grip with the he puts the hand like this and rubs it down, picks them up with his thumb, and then tosses them. Yeah. So if you asked about chip collection, here's my favorite chip right here, Mike, because I'm the guy who said after you had a really good hand, and then it's like, why don't we pass the dice back to Mark? Mark had an hour and 40-minute hand that you timed because you'd sent a text to your wife saying, "Oh, I'll be up after this guy tosses," and like 2 hours later, you're at the cage. Well, we had said that weekend, whoever hits an ATS is going to have to give a white chip to everybody else. But there's no ATS at the Hard Rock. So you whipped out the Sharpie and gave me this for, yeah, pass, everybody passed. And we passed the dice, past me, past Banker Dude, past a couple other guys that had good hands. And we cleaned out the bank. It was nothing but crop circles when we got done. Oh, it was more than that. It was more than that, yeah. Because, I mean, one of the guy standing next to Banker Dude, I think it was Jim. Jim was doing the heavy power press on the 6, and he pressed it up to $900, and it got a hit. And he's like, he says, "This is the first time I've ever had a bet on the craps table more than $30." Remember that guy? Yeah, he started making 8s instead of 6s.
Guys, come on now. He's not hitting the 6s. It switched to 8s. I didn't listen to myself. Nobody else listened to me. The next thing you know, we're all pressing up the 8s and the 6. We're all thinking, well, surely to God he'll throw one more 6, right?
Well, and at the same time, we had the other guy that was colorblind.
Oh yeah.
You told him to get his $30 ready, and he had, he thought one of his green chips was actually a red chip, so he drops 2 red chips and says, "Go to 420," and the dealer's like,
yeah,
that doesn't work.
That's almost a memo press right there.
That could have been, but we got tagged on that. So I'll let you get Memo on here to explain that story. But
yeah,
I
I'm
got
going
some
to get
more
him.
chips here. I got my original Dice Coach chip from like Dice Coach, dicecoach.com, and then he's got the message on the back. This is not a system; it's a skill we can teach you, which is that's a great chip. And let's see, I got this is from the tub at Casino Royale, which was an 8-foot tub, and Felipe and I would go play that, and you would sit these little chairs. So right in the middle of the table, I'm sitting in the right chair, he's in the left chair, so it's my turn to shoot. He moves his chair to the left about 2 feet, and so then I can just reach out, and almost drop them at the wall. Then when it's his turn to shoot, I move my chair to the right, and so then he goes like that. So that was from one of our big scores at the Casino Royale. This is from my first 6-point fire bet that I hit at Harrah's. This is the chip that was on the table, and so that was kind of cool. And it's a pretty cool thing. I needed a lot of luck. I had a lot of heat after that 5th point, and I changed sets because I think the one I needed was an 8. I had to make the 4 3 times, and then I finally, changed to a hard way set to make the 8. Yeah, and so that was, you know, that was pretty cool because it's unbelievably hard to make because you you know I had to make the, like I said, the four three times, and you know, it was like the second time everybody's like, just this groan comes out like, oh well, we're dead now. It's like, you know, I got there's a bunch of suits watching, the cocktail people showing up, and you know, they're trying to ice me, so I just iced them back. I kept stopping and making bets for the crew, forcing the speed of the game to come to me. I got this one from Celebrity Cruise Lines. It's not from a craps cruise. It was from like 2008. I was I was on a cruise. Actually, one of my friends, my deputy, got married on a cruise ship. And so we all got there early for the wedding. Then we all cruised together for 10 days, which was kind of cool. So because it was a semi-formal wedding, I had the garment bag with the tux in it. So the first 2 nights, I wore the tux to dinner after the wedding, and then I was down at the craps table, me and James Bond playing at the cruise ship craps table. So that was kind of cool. Then I got a. This is from Harvey's in Tahoe. Yeah, the Harris boys back when I was 2008 2009, they were offering me free flights to Tahoe from Virginia. So it's like, oh yeah, I'd take the golf clubs. I would play at Lake Tahoe Club, and then I would come up and play the Edgewood course, which they have for the golf tournament every summer with all the sports and celebrities people. And so you could walk across the parking lot from Harvey's and to the
I
clubhouse.
played I played 18 hours one time at that Harvey's.
Really?
Yeah, I really did. Long time ago, 1993.
Wow.
I played 18 hours solid, straight through.
That's pretty long. I've had some long sessions there too, but never more than a shift.
Yeah, I mean, 18 hours is a lot. And I went back to my condo. I was there for like 7 days. I had a condo, so I went back to the condo and I slept for, I don't know, 6, 8 hours. Then I went straight back to Harvey's and played like another 6 or 8 hours, I think.
Here's the back. It's got kind of the lake and the mountains behind it.
There you go. Yeah, yeah. I
I
was.
think, yeah, I think the reason I saved it was that was one of my Darkside jaunts where I was shooting and my toss was just crap, and I wound up setting 6 no points, through 6 different numbers in a row with probably a couple of craps numbers in between. And I had odds on all of them up on the back wall. And then I finally sevened out and won them all. That was probably why I kept the chip. So, uh, I've got my, I don't have it, I got it in the other room. I've got my DarthNater chip that Aloha Johnny made into a key ring for me. So I think I see it in your wall there too, that black one. Yeah. Well, I used to do a lot of golf instruction just but for helping friends golf. So you kind of learn, uh, from watching ball flight, what's wrong with their swings, and I think you apply that same eye to dice setting.
Hey, how do you go from being such a good right side player and a right side tosser to one of your things that you're really known for is your dark side play?
Well, like Heavy says, if you're not playing the dark side, you're only playing half the game,
That's
and
correct.
the dark side stuff is primarily a play to stay at the table when you're not shooting the dice.
Yeah.
I mean, uh, it's like I see a lot of people that'll do 110 inside, trying to get a couple hits and then regress against a random guy. And it's like, I don't want to bet $100 against a guy I've never seen who rattles them around and throws them off the ceiling.
Yeah.
I don't want to bet on those guys. And yeah, one or two of them are going to hit Nirvana, and that's where the one hit can't miss comes in. So, but it's if you don't know your way around, the dark side is a good place to start. And I mean, there's times where I've been shooting on a table, and I'll just start shooting on the don't pass, because you can always hedge the point. And so you get a point that's not very good, you just start making 6s and 8s. No one bugs you when you're shooting on the don'ts and you're not making 7s, because they just say, oh, that's a guy that he saw DI on the internet, so he thinks he's a dice setter now. He's shooting on the dark side.
Now they watch my channel and they think they're good now, right?
Well, I think there's guys that are a little shakier than you out there, Ed. I mean,
But
at least you can learn real stuff on your channel.
well, thank you. I saw a guy one time. I mean, this is the typical dark side guy you normally see. Even though this guy was beyond stupid. He's betting like $100 on the don't pass, and he sets the point, and he can't throw a 7, and for some reason he decides to put like $400 on hopping the 7s or a no 7, any 7 play out there, and then he hits the point, and knocks himself off, and so he reaches in, he builds a bigger chip, he's trying to martingale his way out of the hole. And I remember that this guy, it was at the Beau Rivage, he totally wiped his bankroll out and hit the point, and they had to pass the dice to me because he was done. He was gone.
Wow.
As a dark side player, he was gone on himself. And I'm sitting there playing the 6 and 8 on the guy like a dummy. I just was playing the 6 and 8, and I was making money, and he was killing himself. But
there's a lot of guys that just they've got the process, and they're a little way they're going to play through thick and thin. They just think that they're going to wind up at the end, and they just don't have the bankroll to sustain themselves against the house.
Yeah, and, I mean, the house has got a much bigger bankroll, and then they've got house limits.
Yeah, and it's tough. I mean, I see a lot of guys. A lot of people taunt the Darksiders, but you'd be surprised. Most of the guys that have any kind of an interesting play, they can't wait to tell you about it.
Oh yeah.
And you go and you talk to them, you learn a lot, because I mean, it takes a different approach, and a lot of people don't want to try that because I'm betting against the shooter, I'm blah blah blah, all this crap between your ears.
Yeah. So that reminded me, when you said that, there's an old story about you learning something. I guess it's a way to bet or a way to play the dark side, from a guy that was betting banana chips or yellow chips.
Yellow Chip Steve. Yeah.
Yellow Chip Steve. There you go. Okay.
At the Palms. I came into the Palms one day. I stick right, stick left too, and he's down at the left turn. And Steve, all he had in the rail was a bunch of yellow chips and a couple of the change, a couple of greens, reds. And his play was, he'd wait for a point to be established, and then say this shooter throws a 9, and then Steve would lay the 9, and he would just drop a yellow chip on the table. The dealer already knew what to do because Steve was a regular. He'd just put that over in the back wall, put the little lay lammer on it, and he's laying the 9. So every time Steve gets an outside number after it's been thrown, he puts down the yellow chip. He will not lay the 6 or the 8. So only the 4, 5, 9, and 10. And he never lays the point until it repeats. So if the point's a 9, he doesn't lay the point then. He waits till the guy makes the 9, and then he lays it the second time. And he doesn't do any one hit, can't miss. He's not placing the 6 or 8 because he's got all this protection while he does it. He might sit there and watch 4, 5, 6s or 8s go by. He's only waiting to, he's like, he says, if I get, so I go and I talk to him at the end, and he says, yeah, if I get all 4 out there, that's like having the bases loaded. I'm just waiting for the 7 to slam it home for me. And he said, I was watching him do this because you don't see a yellow chip guy too often at the Palms.
Right.
And I haven't been to the Palms much since COVID ended and they opened it again. So no one's seen Steve that I know of, but he's very knowledgeable. He says, I said to him, how come you just use yellow chips? Do you ever get to the point where you've won so many yellow chips and you press them? And he says, no, I just feel comfortable just betting one yellow chip. Oh, okay.
Okay. Very nice.
I said, so, if someone knocks you down, do you replace? He says, yeah, you knock down 2 of mine. Once 2 get knocked down, I take them all down.
Okay.
He said, I wasn't paying much attention. I didn't realize you were a dice setter. I almost never bet on those dice setter guys because, you're not going to have a whole table of dice setters. So I'll just wait till the next guy to
Right.
chuck him down there. And his deal with the Palms was he only paid the vig on the win. That was
So he had his own deal cut with them before
he
he
says,
played.
I'll come play there, but I want to pay the vig on the win, even for the 5 and 9. So the dealers are, you're trying to pay off a no 9 or a no 5. That's $1,000. Well, you got fractions involved here, right?
Right.
So the dealers have gotten to where they don't know what the fractions are because they know Steve knows, and Steve always has the stack ready, and he just sets it on the table, and they push over all the yellow chips and the payouts.
Right.
And so it was very cool, and it was like he couldn't wait to talk. It's like, I go around. I said to him, I said, I really like your play, and so he couldn't wait to tell me all about it. And
very nice.
A lot of the Darkside guys that have interesting stuff going on. There was a guy at GBR.
Well, nobody ever talks to the Darkside guys. I mean, they're like,
because
right?
they don't want to talk because they think you hate them.
Yeah.
And no one wants to talk to them because most of the time, all these people do hate them. And there was a guy at the GVR that was playing a version of the choppy table short leash where he would start with a $70 bet, and his next bet was like 300, and then 600, then like 1,400, and then it was like I think 2,800.
Wow.
And he put that 2,800 down at GVR, and the guy, it's on the don't pass.
Yeah.
And the guy throws a 3. And it was like, oh, and he just picks everything up, and he's going to the cage, and I saw him and said, wow, that was quite a sequence. He goes, yeah, I just try to win 400 a day, and then I'm out of here.
He's got 2,800 on the don't pass. He's just trying to win a couple 300.
Yeah, I'll be back tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel. Oh, okay.
All right.
I don't know if I'll be here, but yeah.
That's
so
funny.
there's a lot of guys that they're willing to. I said, well, what happened if you didn't hit at 28? He says, then I'm going to go to 6,000.
Wow.
It's like, oh,
that's a big
I
number.
might have to come back and see that.
I might have to go pee.
Maybe.
I not going that high.
Yeah. So it's I mean, my approach with the Darkside is I'm trying to sustain a little bit of money off of every shooter until it's my turn to shoot.
That's the way
Alternatively,
I play it. I play it the same way. All I'm trying to do, the perfect scenario for me is by the time the dice get around, I've played enough Darkside that I got money to place a bet with without touching my bankroll.
right. So it's like a free bet.
Yeah, it's a free bet on Ed. That's my goal is to have enough money to play, and then I got a free bet on Ed when the dice get to me.
Exactly. And
You know,
sometimes a free press as well.
but I get overzealous. You've seen me play the dark side a little bit in the past. I always lay odds. I can't help it. I put the odds on there every time on the outside numbers. I'm an odds guy.
And since COVID ended, it seems like any flinger out there can knock down a no four. It
Oh
just
yeah, absolutely.
drives you batty. It's like
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
no way this guy should be able to throw that.
yeah.
So,
They'll throw four of them in a row if you ain't careful.
yeah.
And then as soon as you give up, they throw a seven
Yeah.
every time. All right, so you've got a particular way when you're done with a session, you're ready to call it off for the day. It's called the sayonara bet, right?
Sayonara bet.
Do you mind explaining that and talking to us about it?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell it the way that was one of its more successful efforts. But basically, what it is usually after you have a good hand at the table, everybody colors up, right? Odds are lightning's not going to strike twice. But that's from a dark side point of view, that's the best time to go dark because, you know, call it the law of averages, call it do number theory, call it lightning doesn't strike twice. The next guy after an hour hand, he's not going to have an hour hand unless he's a skilled person and he beats the odds. If it's just a flinger, you know, that's the best time to go dark. So I'm at the Excalibur one day with Banker Dude, and he was at stick left, and I had stick left too. And Excalibur is a 14-foot table. So we had just done pretty well. We'd been there for like 2 hours, and that's $15 table. I think he'd hit the tall 15. Sorry, rocks in my mouth, I guess. $15 table, and he'd hit like the small, and I'd hit the tall, or vice versa. And so we were up, and it's like, oh, okay, well, let's go take it. There's a lot of guys here. They all look like they're bozos. So let's go. I said, let's do the sayonara bet. He's like, what's that? So 15 on the don't pass. A guy in the hook who gets the dice immediately throws a 3. Oh, win, 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 pay, pay, pay. And so we pick up our $15, and he sets a point, and like 2 rolls later he sevens out, so we get another 15. So now we got 15 to pay for the 15 on down there. We got an extra 15, so we just keep letting the same 15 sit on the don't pass. So next guy gets that, he throws like a 4. So take all that money, that $30, and we lay it as odds. And so he doesn't last long either. So now we got more wins. So we just keep sometimes you put 15 up in the rail. That's the original 15 bet, and you just keep letting that flat win. And so it wins, and you keep laying some odds behind it from the other winnings, and you just keep that going until that flat loses. When the flat loses, sayonara.
Yeah.
But we went all the way around the table, not with the same flat.
Yeah.
Where the dice are coming back to Kevin, and I said, "Well, I guess we're staying." And Kevin's, "Yeah, I guess we are." And so we both had 18, 20 rolls, made a little more money. And then it's like, well, what do you want to do now? I sayonara bet. So we both put the 15 down again. There was a new guy next to us. Very first toss, throws a 7. It's like, oh, sayonara.
Yeah, there you go. You're out. You're going.
Yeah, gotta go.
Yeah,
So,
that's a great story.